Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Star's daily sports podcast. It's November 3rd, 2020, Election Day, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Well, we are a daily sports podcast, and we will talk sports, but I had to take advantage of Jesse Newell's final few days covering politics for the Star. You know Jesse from years of covering Kansas basketball and football, but for the past couple of months or so, Jesse went in motion. He left sports for politics, where he applied his love for numbers and analytics. Mostly, what we did was talk about the intersection of sports and politics. It's been an active year for that, more than any I can remember. After a break, we get into a little Jayhawks football and basketball talk, so let's get started with Jesse Newell. Jesse Newell's with us. Jesse, it's been so long since you and I have talked. It's good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Blair.
Well, so let's bring folks up to date. What you've been doing for almost 2 months now. You have gone from one section of my newspaper into another section of my newspaper, and the online product. You have temporarily suspended your Kansas Jayhawks coverage for the political spectrum and covering politics in Kansas, Missouri, and in Kansas City. I've been reading and enjoying your stuff, and it does run the gamut of local politics on both sides of the state line and in the city as well. The Jayhawks have been, Gary Bedore has stepped in and done a terrific job covering KU, and you'll be back soon. But I just want to know how you have found the experience of covering politics on a daily basis in this very, very newsworthy election year.
Yeah, it's interesting. And how this was kind of pitched to me when it first brought up is sort of and I mean this in the most complimentary possible, is the Pete of politics, basically. Our own Pete Gradoff does this sort of thing for sports and is obviously our most read guy, does a great job, especially with Chiefs coverage, of bringing up stuff that, people don't know or don't see and kind of bring it to their attention. And that's sort of what this role has been for me in politics, especially with this election season coming up, is just kind of scouring the web, seeing if local people are in the national news or if national people are talking about local topics, that sort of thing, and bringing that to the forefront and trying to make sure that people see that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's sort of coming from the sports side. You feel like sometimes that sports are the only people with PR folks that you don't want to talk to, or sports are the only ones that this is kind of like a different world. And then you go on the politics side, and I haven't had to do too much of that interaction, but you kind of are reminded that, hey, this is the sort of world that happens in real life and in politics just as much as it does in sports. So there's been a little bit of carryover there, not a bunch of it, but obviously, and nobody be surprised by my background. I've kind of enjoyed getting into the polls and the numbers and looking into that sort of stuff as well. So it's been a change, but got to be honest, I'm ready to get back onto sports and get back to something that I'm very much more familiar with than I am this politics scene.
And that happens soon enough. But yeah, you brought up something I was going to ask you. You enjoy the numbers and the analytics of sports as much as anybody I know, and get into it. And look, that's what politics and trying to read politics. That's so much a part of it now with the websites that a lot of us look at for prognostications and what's happening nationally and locally. So, from just from an analytical standpoint, I'm sure that you've enjoyed that. But what I wonder is, how much interest did you have in politics to start? I mean, were you somebody who just followed politics and interested in the history of politics, or is it just a numbers interest for you?
Yeah, not very much, honestly, Blair. But I think you kind of hit on what I was interested in, is the 538s of the world, or the Upshot from New York Times, those sorts of sites that are kind of trying to figure out as best they can to handicap what the races are going to be, not only the presidential election, but 538's gone pretty deep into the Senate races, the House races as well. And it's been good reading some of this stuff too, because I'm kind of outing myself here, but I think it was pleasure reading during one of those Maui trips that KU basketball had that I read The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver. And I'm not sure there's too many people out there sitting on a Maui beach like, oh, I must partake in my Nate Silver reading for the day. But it really was one of the things that kind of helped me understand kind of this probabilistic thinking and kind of what they're what you're trying to do when it comes to forecasting and looking into polls, that sort of thing. And I think I've sort of gained a little bit even more knowledge trying to track these sites and look into this stuff, and trying to help explain to some people as well, even people that I know, what these polls are trying to do. Because I know there's a lot of distrust in them from after the 2016 election when Hillary Clinton was favored, and then obviously Donald Trump won the presidency. But it is sort of interesting. What the forecasting is trying to do here is not trying to tell you how much they think they're right. They're basically trying to tell you what percent they might be wrong. And so what we've seen from a lot of the polling, and I know this is going to be old news here, we're talking Monday morning, and it might be old news by Tuesday or Wednesday, but you take the polling, you take it for what it's worth, and then you put together this model and say, hey, what are the chances that this thing is wrong, basically? And that's kind of the number you come up with at the end of the day. So there is uncertainty there. And again, if you think along a sort of a model of things, at least as the time we're talking, 538 has, President Trump 10% to win, Joe Biden 90% to win. But again, we know from sports, some of these probabilities, how they play out. I mean, I think I saw online a Steph Curry free throw is about 90% chance, but that doesn't mean he doesn't miss free throws. So it is sort of interesting to get into a different realm of the numbers and kind of learn a little bit more about that in hopes of explaining them, because I think what's most damaging is basically just looking at 2016 and saying, well, Donald Trump won, so we should throw all these polls away. That's not exactly, I think, the best way to do this. There are some scientific things out there, and when we try to kind of just throw that away and completely dismiss it because of one result, I think that kind of takes us down a dangerous line. So some of that has been sort of fascinating, but outside of that, with the politics coverage, not too much. CNN has been on my TV here in my office more in the last month than it has, I would say, in the previous 10 years combined.
Well, and one aspect of this that to me makes it interesting for you and for the readers of the Kansas City Star is there's national interest in the Kansas Senate race. So it's not a foregone conclusion race where it often is. So there is national interest in the Roger Marshall Barbara Boyer Senate race to take to assume that seat. So there's been a lot written and said about that. I know you've written about it yourself.
Yeah. I feel like I wonder how many people are yelling "stick to sports" right now at their.
They all are. but this is an election day podcast, and I think one time in 4 years we can talk a little politics, and we're going to talk sports here in a minute.
I say I love the people that are joke yelling at me on Twitter now, because I will make some sort of sports comment and they'll say stick to politics, so it's been great to see that sort of thing on there too. But no, you're right. I mean, if you Google the term Kansas has not elected a Democratic senator since 1932, you'll probably see a Jesse Newell byline, because I think I've written that probably in 15 to 20 stories here over the course of the last 2 months. And you're right, it is a race that is more competitive. There hasn't been anybody win by a single digit margin that a Republican has not won by less than a double-digit margin since Bob Dole way back in the day with Watergate. So, yeah, it's been a long time since there's been a competitive race. Again, if you go look in the polling on that sort of thing, and 538 takes a lot of stuff into account. They not only take polling, they take into experts' opinions on that. They take into past considerations and what voting demographics are. So that's what these models are trying to do. They're trying to take in as much information as possible and put it all together and see what you find. But, Roger Marshall's still a pretty heavy favorite when you look at all those things combined. I think he was 76% to win. The last time I checked it with Barbara Boyer, 24%. But at the same time, there are still more ramifications on this particular race if you look at it. Because, if Barbara Boyer loses by a single-digit margin rather than a double-digit margin, there could be some storylines to be written that, perhaps Kansas might be leaning a little bit more blue than it has in decades and decades. But, if she's able to pull off the upset, then you'll see Kansas in the headlines across the nation, because that will be something that, like I said, has not happened since 1932. And that is a long time ago, Blair. That is way before any of us were even thought about.
Right. No, that you're right. So, all right. So let's veer into sports a little bit, but let's do so to talk about the intersection of sports and politics, which is happening or has happened in a bigger way than any time I can remember. I think there's a combination of the Black Lives Matter movement over the summer and the incidents that occurred to inspire that, along with just a general awareness of of what's going on in the country, plus the pandemic. I mean, just all sorts of sort of generational events all happening in one year. And one thing we've seen, and we absolutely have seen it in our market, athletes getting involved in politics. And the way that I have seen it is, Chiefs players like Patrick Mahomes, Tyrann Mathieu, and others urging people to get out the votes. The Chiefs even playing a role in that. The Chiefs actually have had on their website, on their official website, voting registration information and links to voter registration, how to do that. And then, of course, Arrowhead Stadium as a polling place is going to happen on here on Election Day. So one of about, I think I read 40 sports venues that are going to serve as polling places. So what do you make of it, Jesse, that what you have covered for your adult life is really taking it's veering toward politics. I don't know if it was avoidable this year that we were going to just keep those two, keep your sports out of my politics and keep your politics out of my sports. I don't think that was going to happen.
Yeah, and I can speak more to the college side of this, obviously, from covering it for a long time. And I even wrote about this or put a tweet out about it Friday in sort of a similar sense, Blair, because I think, a lot of times when progress is made slowly in incremental steps, it's sort of hard or easy to forget the steps that have been made that, maybe it didn't happen 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but things that are happening now. And I think you bring up a good point. What the tweet I posted on Friday, and this seems like a small thing, but KU basketball's official Twitter account has been promoting their players' individual Twitter and Instagram accounts. And it's something that's different from years past. I mean, if you think back, and somebody brought this up very well, but back in 2012, when Tyshawn Taylor got on Twitter and said a few things, point blanking or whatever the case may be. I mean, that was a moment in time where it was frowned upon for any athlete to be on social media. And it was a negative connotation. And coaches were telling their kids to get off of it. And when they were saying stuff on there, they were basically told to stop saying stuff on there and things would be deleted very quickly. You move now to 2020 here and the things that have changed. I think there has been a growth and a good movement from athletic departments, from coaches. I think Bill Self would admit this to you as well. He kind of talked about it in some of these videos he's been shooting over the summer for KU Athletics and his Grill with Bill. But it's a different sort of embracing of the student athlete and their rights and their voice. And instead of maybe pushing that away and pushing that to the side and keeping that undercover, saying, hey, let's educate them. Let's talk to them about this. What's the responsible way to do this? What's the best way to do this? And you're just seeing so many more outreach efforts from KU to the student athletes. Now the student athletes are empowered. And you mentioned, there was I covered along with Gary Bedore, a Black Lives Matter march that KU had a couple months ago that went through campus. And, the chancellor was a part of it. Les Miles was a part of it. Jeff Long, the athletic director, was a part of it. So you're seeing, again, that not only are students being able to organize these things, but they're doing so with support from the people that are above them. And just recently, you talked about voting. All the KU basketball players have voted. They've put that online. They've talked about that. They brought camera crews with them when they went to go vote so that they could kind of announce that to the world and make sure other people kind of hear that message and know that they should be out there voting too if they're able. So, yeah, I think it's just, this is one of those incremental steps I think is very good as you're moving towards name, image, likeness rights for students, as you're moving towards students being able to transfer more often and having more rights in that way, as you're moving towards these student athletes having more of a voice, having more of a say, having more power in this, which is probably what they should have had the whole time. You might just miss some of these steps that have happened. And some of these steps that weren't taking place some 8 years ago when oh my gosh, did somebody tweet? We'll take down his Twitter account. No, that's not the case anymore. Hey, let's bring in somebody to talk to you about your Twitter account. Let's bring in somebody to talk to you about responsible tweeting. Let's bring in somebody to talk to you about how you can make a difference with your Twitter account and how you can influence people in a positive way by doing that. So I just think it's kind of flipped a little bit. And like I said, Bill Self and Jarence Howard both talked about this in a recent Grill with Bill episode on the Q Athletics website. But I feel like Jarence was very proud of the efforts that the basketball team has made, specifically with that. And that Bill Self, I think, has sort of done this a little bit differently than he might have in the past, just based off of recent events. And so I think that's very much a good change that at least at the college side has made, that this intersection of sports and politics, it seems like these athletes, instead of maybe being muffled a little bit, they're being taught and educated in the way that their voices can make a difference. And so that seems like a good change from a few years back.
Another example of that, of course, is the Missouri football team, which went en masse. I think they had 62 players registered to vote when the team marched from campus to the Boone County Courthouse, along with the football coaches, athletic director Jim Sturck, basketball coach Conzo Martin, and other athletic administrators, and just to get the team registered to vote. And I think we've seen and listen, as you said, we're recording this on Monday, running it on Tuesday. Tuesday is essentially a holiday for college athletes, right? They're taking there's no practice. The NCAA has approved a no practice day for college athletes so they can vote, and that's a first also in NCAA history. And I got to tell you, Jesse, and this certainly dates me, but as you were describing so well, the shift in attitude towards social media, and I remember that 2012 Kansas team with Tyshawn Taylor and that incident with social media. I can remember having to get a quote from Bill Self about did you hear what Tyshawn did? And it was just now it's handled so differently today, and it takes me back to a time a couple of decades earlier when, and permit me this bad analogy, but players didn't have tattoos in the early 90s. You just didn't. The people didn't have it. It just wasn't a thing, right? And I was covering the Kansas basketball team then, and all of a sudden a Kansas player showed up with a tattoo, and everybody wondered what in the world was Roy Williams going to do or think or say, or would he make him cover it up? And this was in 94, 93, 94, something like that. And of course, that was just we were just at the doorstep of body art and expression, self-expression that way. And soon everybody had it. But it's sometimes it just, in a moment you learn to deal with it, to understand it, and to know there are better ways to handle situations like that. And I know it's a bad analogy, the tattoo of the 90s, the social media of today, but it's all under the umbrella of self-expression. And we are seeing that is it is part of an evolution that we're seeing in college sports. I was going to go down the road of sports figures using their popularity, their name brand in politics, and there are plenty of examples, especially from our part of the country, of coaches or former athletes who have gotten into politics. You live in Lawrence, and Jim Ryan was a congressman for several terms in your district. In Oklahoma, J.C. Watts and Steve Largent served in the House of Representatives. I can remember covering a story in Nebraska back, 10, 15 years ago when Tom Osborne ran for governor after serving 3 terms as a congressman, but he ended up losing in the Republican primary, which was essentially the election in Nebraska. And it was a stunning thing, Tom Osborne losing an election. How in the world can that happen? But it did. But there is one example. There is an example of a former college football coach who is running for the Senate, and that is Tommy Tuberville in the state of Alabama, the former Auburn coach, and he's coached at other places, but most famously at Auburn and at Texas Tech, right? Running for for the Senate seat that's being occupied right now by Doug Jones in the state of Alabama. So, but that's the only one that I can think of right now nationally. But do sports figures have an advantage because of name recognition? Is there is there a and the other thing I was going to ask you is, do you see anybody on the sports landscape who might be interested or get involved in politics at any point?
I was wondering if this is your roundabout way of asking me, Blair, whether Bill Self wants to run for governor. Is that basically what you're saying here? Or Senate?
Or Bill Snyder.
Or Bill Snyder. Yeah, true. I mean, age is not a thing anymore. So, Bill Snyder's still in his prime if we're looking at all the other candidates out there. I mean, that's kind of the joke that's always been made. And it is interesting that I think I've said it for a long time, but anybody can say it, is that, Bill Self would win whatever campaign election he wants in Kansas for as long as he wants to, just because of the stature that he has. Add Tommy Tuberville to the coaches that begged for KU to hire him as their football coach when he didn't have a job. He is definitely one of those guys, which includes current LSU coach Ed Orgeron, if you want to go on Google and see that as well. It is funny, kind of the history of KU having guys beg for the job and then not hiring them and then going on to do different sorts of things and, potentially be better than a lot of the other hires that they eventually made. But no, I think you're right, Blair. It just depends on one's focus and what they want to turn to after. I've written some stories. Emmanuel Cleaver, I know that's not as pronounced as a pro career as you will, but he was a college athlete back in the day. He's a congressman in the state of Missouri, and he actually helped with a new bill for name, image, likeness that is kind of in line right now to be one of the major bills that could reshape college athletics. And he did that. I needed a quick Google. Maybe you can help me, Blair, but it was somebody actually about my age, a former Ohio State receiver who played in the NFL. He also was part of the bipartisan support with that. So if you Google it real fast, you can find it. But anyway, so there is some intersection between sports. It can help out with popularity. With the guy I just mentioned, once you find his name, we can definitely talk about him and potentially, hey, this guy was in the NFL 5 years ago. It could help his popularity potentially. But there is some crossover. I just think, from being on this side of things in the last couple of months, you really, really, really have to be motivated. You really have to want to do this and have a calling for it and a yearning for it. And I think a lot of coaches, they have a calling and a yearning to help out kids and do X's and O's and write up plays and just, it's something you can't live without. And you really have to have that politically, especially in today's landscape, just because there are going to be all sorts of slings and arrows thrown at you on a daily basis. And you really have to be committed to what you do. If you're not, then it's better off to just retire and be like Bill Snyder and enjoy the rest of your days in Manhattan, Kansas, with a very simple life of watching your grandkids.
There you go. Anthony Gonzalez was the name that we were looking for.
Thank you. Yeah, former Colts wide receiver too. Yes.
Yep, that's right. Okay, hey Jesse, let's take a break here, and when we come back, we will actually shift to a little sports talk. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners: unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, I'm back with Jesse Newell, who covers politics for the Kansas City Star and some sports too. And he's been doing a lot of politics, and he'll start doing some sports here pretty soon. Back to sports for Jesse. And first thing I wanted to ask you, Jesse, what did you make of Jeff Long's support of football coach Les Miles on Miles' radio show last week? And it was quite an impassioned plea that lasted about 8.5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think a lot of things. If you go back to the article I wrote for the preseason predictions for KU football this year, there were sort of two realities taking place at the same time with KU football, which was KU was not going to be as good as it was a year ago, but yet Les Miles won 3 games last year, and fans are thinking just steady improvement. So, like, if you look at it as a graph, a lot of KU football fans are not, and I don't mean this critically, they shouldn't be super into the team, but they're not super into the team because the football team for the last 10 years has not given them a reason to be passionate, hardcore, like, I'm going to look at the roster and see what happened. KU lost a lot from last year's team. And so when you lose a lot, what have previous coaches at KU done? They've gone the JUCO route. They've gone and gotten a left tackle. They've gone and gotten a right tackle. They've gone and gotten a quarterback or whatever the case may be. KU had a lot of those same holes, and Les Miles went out and got all high school players because I always compare this to it's like you have a big restaurant bill and you duck the tab and you give it to your coworker. And your coworker is supposed to clean things up, but he can't do it. And so he ducks the tab and he gives it to his next coworker. And you just keep passing the line. Les Miles finally looked at that $50,000 restaurant tab and said, I'm going to pay for this. You know what? This tab needs to be in the past. So by getting all those high school players, he was going to take some short-term pain to try to help the long-term growth. And honestly, COVID really could have helped Kansas without having this happen because we didn't know that this rule was going to come in throughout college football that, hey, you didn't have to use a year of eligibility. This really would help KU's numbers game. But without COVID, KU really needed to help its own numbers game by getting a lot of young people in the program, redshirting them, and getting them so that they have the numbers moving on up. So this from Jeff Long does not surprise me because sort of like if you look back at Shea and Zenger when he gave David Beatty an extension and he kept backing David Beatty, well, of course he's going to do that. That's his guy. He gave the guy an extension. If David Beatty doesn't work out, it's going to be very difficult for it to work out for AD Shea and Zenger at Kansas, and we saw that play out at KU. So for Jeff Long, I think there are merits to what Les Miles is doing here. There are merits to having a long-term vision for the program and putting a coach in place that is not on the hot seat when you try to do the right thing for the long-term build of the program. Having said all that, I still think, with that happening, a lot more people expected more competitive games. I'm sure I did. I picked them to win 2 games, which now looks completely crazy. But nobody knew at the time Coastal Carolina was this juggernaut team that was going to be the top 20. You thought that game could be a winnable one for Kansas. You thought maybe KU could pick off one team in the Big 12 Conference. That obviously hasn't happened yet. They haven't really come that close. But both things can be true at the same time. You can be sort of improving, getting better, being competitive at some point, and still rebuilding for the future. Right now, KU is definitely rebuilding for the future, but I don't think they've been as competitive as they've wanted. And so I think it makes sense if Jeff Long is trying to preach some patience.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse, that 2-win prediction was based on their original schedule, not on the new schedule. Or did you adjust your prediction based on the new football schedule?
Oh, I wish it was, Blair. Thank you for giving me an out. We can make people believe that if we want to. That would not.
They were going to beat New Hampshire, right? I mean, they.
Well, yes. Well, see, and that's the other problem is you take 2 winnable games away. I mean, KU's non-conference schedule this year was set up really, really well. They had New Hampshire at home. Decent, but not amazing FCS opponent. Going to be home against Boston College, who they beat last year, and then at Coastal Carolina, which, again, we didn't know Coastal Carolina at the time. But if you're going to play a road game, you're going to play a team that has never hosted a Power 5 team at its home stadium. I mean, there might be some nerves there. And, again, Coastal Carolina is not exactly – I guess they're top 20. But if you looked at them on schedule in the preseason, you're not going to say that's Auburn. You know what I'm saying? So it did look promising. But, no, that was my prediction afterwards. And it was funny after that 2-win prediction, I still had somebody – come back at me on Twitter and say, "Oh, Jesse's predictions where my dreams go to die every single year." So there was even a point there by calling KU 2-8 where a lot of fans thought, "Hey, Jesse's pouring a lot of cold water on the season." Usually I am the pessimistic one, but this year it looks like potentially I was not pessimistic enough.
KU fans would kill for 2-8. Sure. Sell out everything for 2-8. Okay, let's switch sports. You are a AP Top 25 basketball poll voter, and you are putting together your preseason ballot as we speak. How's that task going?
Well, this is kind of where we get back to the numbers, Blair. It's
Analytics. Let's go.
The analytics, and I am the analytics poll voter. It is. I told you off air before I started. This does make me feel about as real as I've felt in a few months here, because I'm looking through this and looking through my poll rankings and figuring out which fan bases are going to yell at me when this poll first comes out. So, if I feel alive again, Blair, I feel like the whole world is back to normal. But so, like for example, and again, this is subject to change. This poll is due later, and I'm not sure I'm supposed to, tip my picks, but I know, everyone don't go running to the AP, the heads of AP, telling them that I told you this. But last year there was the big debate: Kansas or Baylor, Kansas or Baylor, Kansas or Baylor. I had Kansas number one for a long period of time when nobody else did. And then obviously Kansas beat Baylor in that game down in Waco. It looks to me like right now, the way I'm leaning, there's a pretty clear number one, and it's going to be Baylor. So just proof once again that even though it sure appears like my bias is coming through and I am just, absolutely a homer against Baylor athletics, that when the numbers swing your way, I'm going to be on your side, and it sure looks like the Baylor Bears are going to be number one. I will give you this too, Blair. I'm not going to be a Kansas homer this year, probably labeled by the Twitter media. I'm going to be a Big 12 homer, because the analytics love the top five in the Big 12. They love Kansas, West Virginia, Texas, Texas Tech, and then obviously Baylor. So it's going to be kind of crazy if those teams do get to play each other and kind of cannibalize each other in the Big 12 conference. But I'm telling you, this is the best chance the Big 12 has had to have multiple Final Four teams in a long, long period of time.
Yeah, I just hope that there is a basketball season that comes off somewhat normally and can. We already know it's going to look strange, at least for a while, when we're talking about 1,500 people in Allen Fieldhouse, and who knows what's going to happen. We already know that they're playing a little bit of an abbreviated schedule, and I'm not sure. Kansas hasn't released its schedule yet. I don't believe, not all of it, right? There's still some spots to fill.
Most of it, there's one available spot. They're not sure if they're going to fill it right now, but they actually have most of it filled in. But yeah, it would just be a shame because, when we talk about how good a league is compared to perception, a lot of times the perception part of this is people want teams that are at the very top. And, I've kind of tried to argue in recent years, like, hey, the Big 12, there's no bad teams. Everybody's in the top 50 or in the top 40 in a 10-team conference. And that's really, really good. But this year would be the opposite. This year there would be the haves and the have-nots, and you would have 5 Big 12 teams that were really, really, really good. So that would kind of be a fun dynamic as well. As you said, let's hope that everything kind of gets under control here and that they play these games as normal, because if so, this is going to be a really fun conference slate.
Okay, Jesse, I think the next time that we talk to you, it will be back in your role as a KU beat writer, and you will have put politics in the rearview mirror, at least until maybe the midterms in 2022. So hope you've enjoyed your foray into the politics world. And listen, people, go vote if you haven't done it. Get that done. You still got a little time left. Go vote. Jesse, great talking to you. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds good. I will trade CNN for ESPN then.
Beauty. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell for stopping by and talking politics and KU sports. You can read Jesse's stuff on kansascity.com, or we got some links to his stories in the show notes. Hey, we got another deal for you, especially for those who want to deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. Do you want more than sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email at bkerkhoff@kcstar.com and I'll get you to the right place. Whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode.